San Francisco and Lisbon may not officially be sister cities, but we can call them twins, separated at birth. That bridge over there, same color as the Golden Gate Bridge, international orange. That's a famous color now, designed by the creator of the Bay Bridge. So it's like a hybrid of the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge, sitting on top of a European city. What a trip. They're calling Lisbon the San Francisco of Europe. So for the first time in a long time, while we've been over here on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, we got a firm connection back to the 49ers. Makes it the perfect spot to inaugurate a new series. On the first of every month, we're gonna have a prediction show. Short-term and long-term 49ers predictions. The short-term predictions, they'll handle the rest of the month. The long-term predictions, well, they'll feature a record prediction for the 2025 49ers season. So it is July 1st. We're ready for training camp. And my big short-term prediction is that Ricky Pearsall, by the end of this month, he's going to be one of the most talked about 49ers players. I think he is going to enter training camp and make a massive splash. Everybody's been talking about Jacob Cowing as a second-year 49ers receiver who's ready to do some really big stuff because he's put on some of that muscle. He needed that muscle. He weighed only 168 pounds to begin training camp last year, so he wasn't really ready to block in Kyle Shanahan's scheme. People haven't been talking about Ricky because he tweaked his hamstring and the 49ers shut him down early. He wasn't that seriously hurt. They just didn't want to waste anything and risk anything over the course of the spring program. But Ricky, he's not going to be holding back in training camp. And I think that the way that he finished last season, 14 catches over those final 2 games for the 49ers, the way that he finished absolutely sets him up for a big-time second year. He's acclimated to the system now. I mean, think of what Ricky Pearsall was able to do last year after getting shot in the chest. Like, he got shot in the chest as a rookie. Not only survived, he thrived in the NFL of all places. He was able to get in there and by the end of the season become a true force for the 49ers. They need him at the start of this season. He needs to make a statement at the start of training camp. And I think that he's going to be ready to make that statement for San Francisco. Now, that's my short-term prediction. I think by the end of this month, we're going to be talking a lot about Ricky. How about the long-term prediction? This is the one that's going to be subject to change month to month. As we get new information, we're absolutely going to course correct. But I think that my long-term prediction right now for the 49ers in 2025 is an 11-6 record. I come to this conclusion through a couple of avenues. One, I look at what the Rams did last year. They were 10-7. They won the division. They won a playoff game. They went into Philadelphia, and I can't say they almost beat the Eagles, but they hung in there with Philadelphia. The Rams had a lot less talent at the upper ends of their roster than the 49ers do now, and they're still able to go 10-7 and win the division. But the Rams are using a similar roster renovation blueprint as the 49ers have applied this offseason. So I take the Rams' success. They had the lowest defensive spend of any team in the NFL last year. I take the Rams' success and I say, well, the 49ers can apply the same type of formula, but they have more A-list players. So from the A-list standpoint, no more Aaron Donald for the Rams. They've got Matthew Stafford. He was their leader on the offensive side of the football. Obviously, Puka Nacua. They had a very aging, relatively ineffective version of Cooper Kupp, at least versus what he was a couple years ago, and the lowest defensive spend in all of football. Yet they were still able to manage 10 wins. But I think that the 49ers with Bosa, with Warner, with Deommodore Lenoir, with Trent Williams on the offensive side, George Kittle, one of the future Hall of Famers on this team, Christian McCaffrey back, obviously Brock Purdy anchoring things at quarterback, and we'll see what they're able to do at the wide receiver position. I already talked about Ricky Pearsall, but we'll see about Brandon Ayuk, and we'll see how Demarcus Robinson fares for the 49ers. But with all of that talent, I think that for San Francisco, this is something that could turn into more wins than the Rams had last year. I even think at this point in the prediction process that 11 wins is conservative for the 49ers, given the last place schedule in 2025. I couldn't think of a better setting to inaugurate this golden hour in Lisbon. That bridge over there, I mean, it feels like I'm playing Sim City again. It feels like somebody just plopped the Golden Gate Bridge down in Europe. That is actually the 15th of April bridge in commemoration of Portugal's Independence Day, and it was designed by the same architect who designed the Bay Bridge in San Francisco, and it is Golden Gate Bridge colors. That's international orange. So a hybrid of the Golden Gate Bridge and the Bay Bridge right here in a city that, like San Francisco, has 7 hills. Total trip. Every single time I see that bridge, doesn't feel real. It's my second time in Lisbon. Food, awesome. Obviously, the history tied with San Francisco is awesome. We did a show from a street with a cable car today. San Francisco and Lisbon have that in common, and they both have this entrepreneurial spirit. I think it's because they're both West Coast cities. One of them is a West Coast Atlantic Ocean, one of them is a West Coast Pacific Ocean city, but both have this, it's a little rough around the edges. I mean, there are parts of Lisbon that are not completely polished, but there is a lot of creativity flowing in the air here. There's a lot of energy flowing in the air here, and you could see why people are flocking to what they call the San Francisco of Europe. San Francisco has its iconic architecture of the Painted Ladies. Lisbon has its iconic tiles. Since the city had to be rebuilt after the 1755 earthquake, we got these tile facades. They come in different colors. They're called azulejos, also iconic, painted and glazed. And you see them a lot in Spanish and Portuguese architecture, and you see them across this entire beautiful city. Lisbon, like San Francisco, is certainly not a perfect city. It has its blemishes, but it has an unmatchable charm. And I was just reading a little bit about Lisbon's beauty and its grittiness online, and I stumbled into a blog called Zooming Way Out. Lisa and Eric, a married couple of 18 years, wrote this about Lisbon, and I thought it resonated a lot with our favorite city back in California in the United States. This is what Lisa and Eric wrote about Lisbon. Lisbon has my heart like few other cities, and it's not for everybody. It's the beauty within the grit of decaying old world power. It is dirty and artsy. It is sexy. It is real and authentic, not polished and staged. You see stunning tile work and old world architecture juxtaposed with uninspiring 1960s apartment sprawl or broken escalators covered in graffiti. Each building is unique. Notice the detail in the metal railings. Keep an eye out for the vintage lanterns. It's nearly impossible to find a coffee to go because you are meant to sit, relax, enjoy the cafe experience. Notice the trench coats, the active old folks, the street art, the laundry hanging from every balcony. Sit back, sip an espresso, and experience life in Lisbon. Now sit back and experience July, the first month featuring 49ers football in its truest form. It's not spring anymore. The 2025 season is almost here.